What's up, guys? I'm Ryan Randalls, and I'm here with my partners, Ryan Fisher, Jason Huang. Together, we are Airstrip Attack, coming at you live and uncut for episode 3 of Airstrip Attack Live, where we're chatting about anything and everything Airstrip Attack. Today is May 12th. We're going to be joined by special guest Ravi with CSF Cooling. Actually happens to be one of our sponsors, but also super cool dude. He's got a lot of experience in our industry. You know, pounding the streets, he's been in it for a long time. He's got a bunch of badass cars too we're going to chat about. But first, little housekeeping. Make sure you guys check us out on YouTube. It's our official channel where we're basically handling any and all questions that you guys have. That's pretty much the #1 channel that we're monitoring. Obviously, love to welcome my partners, Mr. Fisher, Mr. Huang. But first, in today's news, #1, happy birthday, Mr. Casey Howarth, our guest last week. Underground Racing. Hopefully it's a special day for you, buddy. And also to Mr. Fisher, I'd like to, extend a warm, special happy birthday to your mother, Karen Fisher, our #1 fan. In other news, yeah, that's what's up. In other news, Vipers are apparently better than GTRs. And Takashi69 breaks the YouTube record with some big booties, hitting 40+ mil in one day. That's some real stuff right there. Elon Musk defies authorities and tries to open up his Tesla factory. And speaking of Elon Musk, if you haven't seen the Joe Rogan interview round 2, don't waste another minute. Wait until after our live stream, then go check that out, because that dude is on another level. He's got a new kid. It's spelled XAEX12. I don't even think that's legal in America. I don't know, Jason. Is a name like that legal in America?
Are you being racist?
No, not at all. Not at all. I promise. I'm telling you. But I think it's. I honestly, like, how do you even pronounce that? What is it? How do you say that?
I think it's supposed to be Kyle.
It's Kyle.
Have you seen the meme? You've seen the memes with from the what's it called? Yeah, the Key and Peele with the Aaron.
That's good. So yeah, guys, episode 3, we're super pumped. We've been kind of doing these back to back because of a little stutter step back there. So we still got to figure out when our next one is, but regardless, this is episode 3. We're super amped again, Ravi with CSF. So let's get right into it. We got some cool stuff coming up, and 2 high-level topics we're talking about for episode 3 are what can you expect as a spectator if it's your first time, and what can you expect as a participant if it's your first time. So what can you expect as a spectator? I mean, these are literally the coolest, like, kind of like grassroots events you can be part of. So let me paint a picture. If you were coming in on a bus and you were cruising up over a hill, I'm literally visioning coming into Colorado Springs Airport. You're like a mile and a half. You're on the shuttle bus, and you're literally coming up over this crest, and you see racing off in the distance. It's like something out of Fast and Furious, right? And you're like, oh man, it looks like there should literally be a I don't know, a Cessna or a Learjet or like some commercial service aircraft taking off on this massive 2.5 mile runway off in the distance, but instead you see some badass cars ripping down the runway. And your heart starts pumping. So imagine just driving with this in view the entire time. You come all the way down, you get dropped off literally right in the middle of it. And it's a full 360 degree. You have English Racing on one side of you. You have UGR on the other side of you. You have Jason vaping on the other side of you. And then you have Fisher standing on a car giving a driver's meeting with, hundreds of people flanked around him. And yet there's still people on the runway for some reason, and they're cruising. You got the smell of race gas. You have rubber around you, and that's the coolest thing. I mean, we'll start with you, Fisher. What is your #1 experience you think for spectators that just defines what Airstrip Attack is?
I think the big thing is, rarely do not only you get to see a lot of these cars up close in person, but to see them, battling it out and going, 200+ miles per hour. Right in front of your face. And not only that, but, as a spectator, some people think, well, we're going to be very separated from, the participants and the drivers and the teams. But once you're in the gates, you have the same access essentially as the racers and everything else. So you get to meet the guys and talk to the guys and girls that are racing these cars. We've had $3 million Bugatti Chirons out there and you can not only see this car up close in person, but you can talk to the owner, you can talk to the guys that are working on it, and you can see it go, it did 190 miles per hour in the half mile for a stock car, which is stupid. But I think that's the big thing, is rarely do you see these cars up close in the first place, let alone going 200 miles per hour and have the opportunity to interact, with the people driving them and building these cars.
I don't know how you can trump that, Jason. Is there an experience better than that?
I think one of my favorite things to do, because I'll try to run a little, if I get an opportunity to do that, like early in the morning, when the gates first open and you see these kids and families and fans of cars walking into the event. And I love to sort of go around either on like my scooter or on a skateboard or something, and I'll run some Instagram live. And I just love, like, because we'll have the cars like they're just pitted like in a long stretch, right? Like just hundreds of feet. And what you'll see at our events is like all these Corvette guys parked together, and then you'll see a bunch of CTSVs and then like, a dozen GTRs, like just all parked together, because they come in, they're like, yo, that's where I'm going to park, because that's where my that group of cars is going to be, all the Mustangs or whatever. And I love like just going behind like all the Corvettes or the CTSVs, and they all sort of like do their cold start at the same time, And like as I'm like sort of on my skateboard and I'm like trying to do my Instagram live behind them, and you get the sound and the smell of the race gas all at the same time. It's just pretty surreal to just like, and every car, just like when you go from one section to the other, they obviously sound very different. You got all these American cars and they're all cammed and they all got that same like gurgling sound when they're just like sort of warming up. And then you get behind the GTRs and it sounds like, somebody with a trumpet, and they're all just warming up. But it's cool because you can smell the race gas. You could hear these cars, and you can almost tell what level of modification they're at, even by how they sound. I mean, sometimes you'll look at a car, you'll be like, oh, that looks like a pretty stock car. And then they start it up and you're like, holy shit, like that car's gonna be fast. You just tell right away. So there's something really cool about like being up close to them and not just seeing them, but hearing them and then smelling the race fuel. If you're a racing fan, that does something for you. So
100%. Yeah, I think, there's a lot of like naysayers that are like, what? It's like Airstrip Attack. You're a couple hundred feet off of like where the actual racing happens. It's like, yeah, but you don't realize like you're in the pits. The entire experience from the event is in the pits. And yes, while you're a couple hundred feet from the runway, obviously for safety reasons, because it's a wide open runway and taxiway, it's an airport. You can still feel those cars ripping, especially like the really high horsepower ones. Like we were just watching that video where we're literally like right next to the grandstands doing the broadcast, and you can hear the transmission popping. I mean, obviously it's the entire powertrain of the UGR car popping as it's ripping a 60 mile an hour pass. You can feel that. I mean, it's a visceral experience. So not just the pits, but it's also the racing experience. So, we just wanted to let you guys know, like, if you have questions, if you want to, just come out and check out the event. There's no other way to really explain it. How do you do that? So our new website, airstripattack.co, we've consolidated all of our websites, PlaceSpeakAirstripAttack.com, ShiftSector.com, Indy Airstrip, consolidated them all down to airstripattack.co, where you can both register to participate as well as pick up your spectator tickets. And there's a bunch of information. We're actually building out how to spectate section right now, so we'll continue to work on that. But one thing that we constantly get asked is like, okay, like I get what roll racing is, but like what is a trap speed? And people that are in the industry ask us all the time, what is a trap speed competition? Jason, hit me, like, what do you define a trap speed competition as?
Basically it's how fast can you get your car to go from 0 to whatever that speed is in exactly a half mile. So we get asked a lot of different types of questions. Is it a rolling start? No. It's an exact half mile. So it's you start from a dead stop. You go for a half mile. Our timing system picks up whatever that speed is, and that speed is emailed to you electronically. And that's what a trap speed competition is. And we split it up amongst classes. But generally speaking, that's what a trap speed competition is. How fast can you go in a standing half mile?
So like in the context of Coalinga, California Airstrip Attack, you guys literally back the cars up all the way to the edge of the runway, right? And then you basically mark from the start at the beginning of the there's a starting line there. That's where the flag girl is, right? No, grid girl. And
let me expand on this a little bit. So one thing that people like to do, because it's the internet, is they like to try to pick apart, in Colorado, you have a flag that designates the start. In Coalinga, we don't have a flag that designates the start because the reason is that track is really short. So we don't want to waste a single foot of track space because that's less space that our drivers have to slow down. It's just a shorter track compared to some of the other venues that we run. I mean, think about it like road racing. Like if you're at Laguna Seca, it's a different track than Big Willow, and if you're at, if you're at Willow Springs or you're at Chuckwalla, like these are all different racetracks. Mid Ohio, they're different racetracks, and our venues are like different racetracks. They're set up and run differently because of the venue that we have. So each one is going to be set up and run slightly different because it's a different venue. Traction is different. The length, the width of the runways are different. So we set up accordingly to run the event as safe as possible. That's our biggest priority. So if it looks different to you in a video, from one video to the next, if it looks like the start is different or something is different, it's because we set it up that way on purpose. It's so that we can maximize the amount of space that we need so that the guys driving have enough room to slow down. But we still, no matter what, we measure from where those cars start. It might be a flag. It might be a piece of tape. Whatever it is, we measure that for the half mile to the finish line, and that's our half mile. So people like to pick it apart because it looks different from one venue to the next. But, these are different racetracks that have different variables to them. And so we set it up that way for the safety of the drivers. But from the start, from a dead stop to the finish is a half mile.
So that's the takeaway, that we have consistent measurements for every single event. We actually bring out a formal construction survey crew that measures it down to the quarter inch over the entire half mile. We do that for every single one of our events. California, Indy.
Yeah, they tell us what the half mile is. We don't decide what the half mile is. We have a professional company come out. They set up the entire survey equipment, and they say from here to here is a half mile, and we say okay, and that's our mark. So we don't make that decision. We have someone else come in and do it for us.
That's perfect. That's well said. So then back to the context of Coalinga, you back the car up. They're sitting right at that start line, and what do they do? I mean, I know what they're doing, but are they just gunning it straight like out of a dig, or is it? I mean, do they?
Yeah.
I mean, what is the standard operating procedure? So dead stop. I mean, they're like a quarter mile dig.
Yeah. So I mean, this is the thing. So every car is different, right? So you're gonna be, when you go out to race, you're gonna be led to where the start is, and then from there you're gonna pay attention to our beautiful grid girls who are gonna tell you back it up, pull forward. If they're like come on up, like come up. They want you to come up to the line because you're starting too far back. They might tell you to back it up because maybe you've crossed the line. They're trying to maintain so everyone has the same starting position. And then you will wait for them. They will point at you or look at you, and they're looking for you to give them sort of a nod or a thumbs up that says, hey, I'm ready to go. And then they'll give you an arm drop, just sort of like you would see on the streets in a street race, and then you go. So some cars are really powerful. They can't just floor it out of first gear. They might have to come out real slow, and it's not until they get into mid-second gear or some cars even third gear before they can truly get on it. But whatever it is, you have an exact half mile to accelerate. And that trap speed that you get at the end will sort of determine your position in regards to how you're doing versus other cars.
Perfect. So, all right. So that's the concept of digs. So of course, everybody, that's basically our trap speed competition is essentially digs. I mean, it's a full half mile from a dead stop. So here's our next topic. It's perfect segue. So solo versus digs versus roll. So like, what if somebody wants to roll race? Can they do that at our events?
Yeah, you could do, Fisher covers it thoroughly in our driver's meeting, but you could do whatever you want. So there's never any pressure for you to have to race someone else. If you want to come out and you're uncomfortable, racing next to someone, because there's always, a little more risk if there's a car that's accelerating next to you.
Or it's your first time out, and I mean, we kind of expect everybody to do that. Yeah.
Look, almost all of our record passes or the fastest passes are usually solo passes. These guys know that they're coming out. They've turned it all the way up. They're going for, whether it's, you want to call it a Hail Mary pass or a world record pass or a personal best pass. When someone's turned all the way up and they're trying to go, you never know. It could be 190, 220, 230. most of the times they're going to come up and they're going to give us that, they're going to be like, I'm going by myself, just one. They're going to come up, they're going to let us know, I just want to go by myself, because they feel safer that way. And everybody has the option to do that, whether it's your first time racing or your 500th time lining up. If you want to go by yourself, you can. So you could go out there and just race against yourself all day. You can hit up a buddy and say, hey, you want a dig race? You want a half-mile dig race? Let's line up together, and they could do that. And they could just disregard the timing aspect of the whole thing, and maybe somebody and somebody else then talking trash to each other on the internet or just their buddies, and they want to do like a 50 roll, right? And we set up cones along the way out, so they could be like, hey, second cone, 50, second gear, 50 mile per hour roll race. You could set that up amongst you and your friends or your enemies, and you could do that. So you could roll race, you could dig race, you could shut it down at the quarter mile if you want. You could do whatever you want. We give you a half mile of space to accomplish what you need to do. So
that's kind of the name of the game. It's like, yes, we have like a technical setup with our trap speed competitions, but really it's like just come out and have fun. It's a safe environment to do so. That's essentially the whole idea.
Yeah.
So speaking of competition, let's break down some classes. I know there were some really good questions. I'll pull the question up from last time too, but you guys.
Sure.
But yeah, I mean, go ahead. Who's taking that one? Who wants to chat?
Should we talk about the classes?
Yeah, let's talk about classes. Fisher, let's take it away.
I can chat about it. So yeah, I mean, over the years since we started, we've tried to find the fairest and most competitive way to kind of put cars against each other, and that's been an evolution of what those classes were. In the beginning, we had horsepower tiers, but then we quickly learned you can't really police that because with the plug-in of a laptop, you could gain another 500 horsepower. So we moved away from that and started moving towards platforms, and platforms is kind of where we really just stayed with, because it makes it a very clear line as far as what qualifies and what does not. And so our obviously powertrain and drive system is a big part of that. So we have all-wheel drive, two-wheel drive, which are obviously some of our bigger classes. And then we have a lot of other areas that are competitive too. We have sedan, we have manual transmission, we have German cars, because there's a lot of very competitive German cars, but they can't compete with, the 3,000 horsepower UGR all-wheel drive cars. And so we built out, the German car class to help kind of bring in a lot of these competitive Porsches and a lot of these cars that are still, blindingly fast, but they should still be competitive even if they're not at that tier of 3,000 horsepower world record Lambo. And so I think over time how we've kind of slimmed down these classes and things like that has been a big part of what I think has made things very competitive and what has made the most sense. So for our 2020 season, basically broken it down to all-wheel drive, two-wheel drive, manual, German car, naturally aspirated, and sedan. So those are our 6 classes. And I think for us, it gives enough variety of different cars to be competitive without stepping on kind of too many toes and having, a certain class just compete over everyone else and dominate over everyone else.
So last stream, Jeff Blair asked a really good question. His question was, any interest in bringing back BMW AMG trophy class? And obviously we consolidated down to German. I know we talked a lot about this, but his concern is that it makes it only like a Porsche only class. I mean, do we have anticipate? I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, the answer is like, yeah, if we have sponsors, the idea we're trying to consolidate down so we can get them all covered, right? So that we have season classes. And if we have somebody that wants to step up into a BMW AMG only class and we have the rest of the German class covered, then yeah, absolutely. We'd want to cover that, right?
Yeah. And I think it's also go ahead, Jason.
No, it's just we got to look at we look at the data, and that's the thing. Unfortunately, within racing in general, and it is not limited to just half mile racing, is that it's never perfect, right? You're never going to find whether it's Pirelli World Challenge or F1 or anything, like there's variances in these manufacturers that tend to favor one manufacturer over the other at times. So, for example, it used to be the BMW AMG shootout, and I can tell you during the time of the BMW AMG shootout, BMWs won like 99% of the time. That's just they had better cars. The shops, whether it's the manufacturer was better, the platform was better. There were more shops, better shops working on BMWs. BMWs were always winning that class. I can't remember the last time an AMG won when we had the BMW AMG shootout. So at the time when we started to see a lot of BMW sign up and very few Mercedes sign up for obvious reasons. We started looking at data for Porsche, and at the time, so of course we always want to go back and reevaluate, but at the time, outside of Anthony's world record Porsche, which was from like many, many years ago, most Porsches were running sort of in that, like, a lot of them were running in that 170 to 190 range, 190 something range. The world record for the BMWs were sort of in the high 180s. So we thought it would be appropriate to lump Porsche with Mercedes and BMW. So unfortunately, since we've done that, it's only pushed the Porsche platform more. It's given all the Porsche shops something to shoot for, because they're like, hey, we could win the German car shootout, so they're all going faster. I think the BMWs are going faster too, but they haven't gone as fast as the Porsche. So we're seeing a lot of Porsches now running in the 190s, a few, breaking through the 200 mark. I mean, we're seeing shops from all over the country step up, and this actually, Ravi will have something to talk about with this too. He's got one of the fastest Porsches around Southern California, and what we saw when we lumped them together was Porsche really stepped up. All the shops stepped up, and they're all going really, really fast now. So it's a good question, Jeff, because I know that you're one of the previous winners of the BMW AMG shootout, and you've got a very fast BMW, so it probably feels a little unfair right now. It's something we'll keep looking into for sure. We want it to be within reach, but it'll never be perfectly fair is what I mean. So
all right. So all that said, who's welcome to participate in Airstrip Attack? Is this a closed shop kind of thing?
Anybody and everybody. Stock cars.
And everybody.
We got trucks. Yeah. I mean, we got these.
Yeah, I mean, essentially, what the limitations to compete is the safety rule. So it's based on speed. So if you're essentially going sub 180 miles per hour, the safety equipment isn't as stringent as over 180 miles per hour. So that's kind of our mark that, if you come out in whether it's a stock, ZR1 or McLaren 720 or whatever it is, most of the time, if it's a stock car, you're not going to need additional safety equipment. And, there's very few cars that break that 180 mark stock. But for example, if you're going to go over 180 plus at our events, which now a bolt-on, or tune-only 720S will do, you still need all of our required safety equipment, which is minimum 4-point roll bar, fire suit, harnesses, fire extinguisher, Hans, gloves. And so that way, not only are, is it on you to kind of be watching your best interest, but it's for us too. And, some of the cars these days are just so fast that, sometimes we get flack for how can you require, a roll cage? I'm not going to put a roll cage in my $300,000 McLaren. And it's like, okay, well then don't come out to our event and try to go 180 plus miles per hour without any safety equipment, So it's one of those things that, we've been at the forefront of trying to be strict with safety. And, because of that, we've had a flawless track record and we've never had any death or serious injury at any of our events. And we want to keep it that way. And so, we've really tightened up on a lot of that stuff. And yeah, so.
All right. So we know who's allowed. And I guess the next question is going to be like, how do you become competitive? Because it's all these stock cars. Of course, you're going to have a blast if you have just a brand new Challenger, Charger, or whatever Hellcat coming out. I mean, but to take it to that next level, and actually, you know what? I'm staring at behind the scenes because I have all the buttons over here, and I see our special guest Ravi just tuned in, and he's looking kind of nervous. So I'm just gonna go ahead and just bring him in, even though this is way before his time. Come on in, Ravi. You there?
Yeah, what's up, Ryan? How are you?
Good, Ravi. Good to see you, man. I appreciate you coming on.
No, I really excited to be part of this podcast. I've been watching the last couple of weeks, and you guys are doing a killer job.
Oh yeah, we appreciate that. We're just trying just to mess around, have some fun, and I don't know, maybe chat and hurt some feelings in the process. So Ravi is with CSF Cooling. You are the lead designer and GC. Did I get that right?
Yeah,
GM?
I mean, yeah, general manager, director of the high performance division. So it's a spin-off of the parent company, something I started 12 years ago. CSF has actually been a family business for 4 generations. So we've been around since the 40s.
Nice.
Started out of a garage in India, just, welding, soldering, copper brass radiators, fixing things up. And it just went from a repair shop to a factory to manufacturing to jumping over to the US when my dad immigrated over here and graduated from Long Beach State. And then, when I was trying to figure out what I was going to do, I always wanted to be in the family business, but I had a huge passion for like high performance in cars. Kind of was like a Fast and Furious kid, in the early 2000s. And I saw, me starting a performance division of the company as something that I could do both, right? Kind of follow my passion of high performance, but also still actively be involved in the family business.
Yeah. What was the primary business before kind of the high performance stuff got involved?
There's a couple different facets to it, but primarily in the US market, it's like OEM replacement, so just your typical plastic aluminum radiator that, replaces whether it's your, Ford Ranger or your Toyota Camry. That's kind of how the main bulk of our business was or still is.
And I mean, obviously, we're kind of all in the same boat. I'm the same, we're close to the same age. I grew up as a Fast and Furious kid too. So I get it, man. And I'm curious to know kind of how you not only kind of like sold that, to the family, but also how you spearheaded that division, which didn't exist before in the company.
It's actually funny because I graduated high school in 2005, and that's like kind of like when Fast and Furious Mania was like really hitting the US, and you could find like bullshit mod stuff everywhere. Like your Pet Boys, your AutoZones, you saw like the stupidest trinket shit that was out there for sale. And my father had actually tried to capitalize that on as well. Like he was selling like colored anodized radiator caps and, came out with like all aluminum radiators for like 20 different high performance cars, most of them like sport compact, but it really didn't take off. He like just didn't understand the market, was trying to sell it through, your normal traditional parts store chains. And it wasn't, it didn't have the right branding. It just wasn't sexy. There was no performance validation because he wasn't working directly with race car drivers and teams. So, when I entered the business in 2009, I kind of saw like this performance division that quickly was launched and closed, and all this inventory sitting there in the back of the warehouse just collecting dust. And I was like, you guys probably didn't launch it right, and you just didn't know how to take it to market. So I restarted the whole thing. And it was a little bit of a humbling experience because I thought me having a little bit more, I guess, know-how and knowledge about the high performance industry, it would be easier for me to get my foot in the door, but it wasn't at all. Because when I started going to shows like SEMA and all these other like smaller trade shows, it was people didn't need another cooling brand. They already knew the cooling brands that they wanted to do business with, so they wouldn't even give me the time of day. So it really took like 4, almost 5 years for the performance division to like really hit, and for people to have seen it enough times, it'd be on the right cars, being on championship winning cars. And then it finally started to click once we were, you got to break through that critical mass and just kind of knock some barriers down. So that's kind of how we got started.
Gotcha.
So
what
I
were
think,
some of the first?
I don't mean to hijack, Fisher. I got to ask. So Ravi, I know you've been part of these events for a few years now. You've gotten the perspective. You've got some badass cars. We'll get to those. I'm going to push these topics on you, and then we'll definitely get back to this entire thing. So like, from your perspective, what are like the first 3 like mods? I mean, this is your world. So like, what are the first 3 mods that you need to think about being part of, like, to participate in a half-mile Airstrip Attack?
I think, the biggest bang for your buck would just be like a good tune, free flowing. You got to free up all the, the restrictions. So like a good, like catless downpipes, a tune, and maybe some good intercooling, and you'd be ready to go. You know, like those three, I think, are things that and obviously good tires. You got to have good tires. And, but I think those three as a power mod would be three that I would just go to right away.
What about, I mean, obviously this is going to be a nice little lead in for you, but let's say you want a hot lap. Like, I mean, obviously we need to keep things cool, right?
Yeah. I mean, now, especially with a lot of these, especially like the exotic cars, are all going to air to water charge cooling. And those are notorious for heat soaking because you have to have a radiator somewhere in the system that's essentially cooling the water that then runs through the charge cooler. And if you don't have any wind velocity going through the radiator in the front, you essentially just start heat soaking the whole system. So if you can put better charge coolers that have less, a higher heat soak point, so they heat soak a lot slower, as well as upgraded heat exchangers in the front, you're preventing, the chance of you doing one lap and then you got to sit there or ice down your car and do a lot of things that you normally see at some of these events, especially because a lot of these events happen in the summer. It's hot. You see the guys with the ice packs on top of their engine and everyone's just trying to keep cool. So, for us being a sponsor of your series this year, it wasn't not just because we really enjoy it and we want to support it, but we want to kind of, shed more light that cooling when you get to that higher level is really important for these guys if they're trying to be consistent with their speeds.
Jason, I mean, you're in that world. Like, you modify just about every car I've ever seen that you've had. I mean, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah. No, it's I was actually going to ask Ravi. Give us a perfect example of a car that you guys have sort of tested that on, and seen the results on. You know what I mean? Like, especially some of these newer exotics, I've seen them heat soak real quick. They'll go out there and they'll do 176, and then the rest of the day they're doing 171, and they wonder why. They're like, why can't I get back to that initial first fast pass of the day? And I'm sure you must have experienced, maybe you've making some of the right mods to some of these cars and seen the results at some of these events.
Yeah, I would say one of the big ones that we released in the last couple of years was for like F10, M5, and like the M6 variant. Those guys are going pretty damn fast. I mean, some of these guys are doing 800 horsepower. Some guys are pushing 1,000. There were a couple guys that were 100, and the charge cooling would just like fall flat on its face. So we came out with like a high performance bar and plate version that was like cast end tank, all aluminum, got rid of potential leaks with the plastic tanks. And we actually even added meth bungs at the bottom of the cooler so guys could spray the meth after it had been intercooled. And it really helped. And that was able to help these guys continue to do laps, keep their IATs down the whole day. And it really just helps, these guys able to, like you said, consistency, because in the morning also air density is better, right? It's usually cooler, the air density is better. And as it gets hotter through the day, these new cars are so sensitive to the air that's going into these systems that you really start to see these speeds drop.
Yeah. And the half mile is you got to keep in mind, is also a long run. It's a much longer run than some people are used to, So when you're full throttle, say for a 1,500 foot roll race, you're full throttle for, maybe a third of the duration of what you would be for a half mile, or even compared to a quarter mile. You're well more than double the duration at full throttle. So, I mean, the amount of heat that you build up over the course of that time, your car may come off the line and it feels good, but it's going to fall flat on its face before you get to the finish line. That makes a big difference on the top end.
Yeah,
for
sure.
I remember I had an 03 E55 AMG that I did a pulley and tune and mods, and one of the biggest issues with that car was heat soak, because the blower on it was just so hot that it would just pull so much timing. And even after I did, they split the cooling lines and they did all these things, you could still feel it, and it was interesting because it was like on a freeway pole. The longer you're on throttle, you can just feel it just suffering, because it's like every second you're on throttle is just generating so much heat, and you would feel it just fall on its face the faster it got. And I think a lot of people underestimate how important, proper radiators and cooling and intercoolers are, because you can make all the power in the world for one dyno pull, but out in the real world, that can be completely different.
Yeah, and the thing that I think a lot, I mean, the shops get it, but your average racer or the guy who's trying to go faster, they keep on adding performance modifications, and they don't realize that cooling becomes even more important as you add more heat to the system. You make more power, you generate more heat. You need to have more cooling to be able to counterbalance everything, so you can actually use all the power that you spent your money to go with. So that's a big thing about our business. Cooling is not something you can hear. You can rarely see it. Sometimes it's kind of hidden under the engine and a bunch of plastic. It's not a sexy modification. So there always has been a little bit of, I guess, education to the general consumer of why they need to buy our products.
I beg to differ. I'm gonna hold on. I'm gonna show this photo that Ravi shared with us. Here we go. Yeah, there's sheepy races. What is that? It's R8, right?
Yeah, that's I think that's one of his customers' twin turbo V10s for an R8. Yeah.
Yeah, dude. And is that your air to water, or that's not even an air? Is that a water intercooler that I see right there?
Yeah, so those are air to water intercoolers. So what we do is we supply custom spec sized cores for them to then fabricate their own end tanks and build their own kits. Alex, owner of Sheepy Race, kind of got the idea to start doing like the color matching of the powder coating on his coolers from what we started doing with all of our BMW charge coolers. That's still a very visible product that we've come out with that sits on the top of your engine bay. And, we do custom finishes for customers who want to match the color of the car. They want to do something wild. So it just allows customers to have a little bit of fun along with the performance benefits that they get when they buy our products.
That's pretty sick. I mean, that obviously looks pretty legit.
That's actually.
That looks good.
I mean, since we're talking about mods that help in the half mile, for sure, cooling. You mentioned tires. I'll bring up a story. This is funny. I don't know if Ryan Cunningham listens to this or not, but this was like early on. So this is probably like 6-7 years ago. Ryan Cunningham put some turbos on this new Mustang, and he came out and he did like his first pass, and he did like, I don't know, it was like 170 something. It was in Coalinga. His car's all over the place, Literally, it's a bone stock car. He just threw turbos on there and tuned it and threw an exhaust on there. And he comes in, he's yelling at me. He's like, this runway's too short. You can't go 170 something out here. I'm like, well, let me look at your brakes real quick. And he had these like shitty ass bone stock brakes on this Mustang. I'm like, you put turbos and brought a 1,000 horsepower car to this event, and you didn't even consider the brakes. And he was like, oh, And I was like, dude, like, so I mean, just in general, like, there are a lot of supporting mods for the half mile. Cooling is one of them. Tires for sure, and brakes. Like, if you've got a 1,000 horsepower car and you haven't even considered upgrading certain parts of the braking components, you really should look at that too, because some of these events run on shorter tracks and you need to be able to stop. So I'll say that brakes is also one of those things.
And not to mention,
safety
is
one of those too. I would also add suspension to that too. I mean, I have a 911 turbo, and these are all $180,000+ cars, and a lot of guys think that the suspension with the electronic dampening, all that stuff is good enough, but there's a reason why companies like KW and Bilstein and Öhlins exist, because they do make a better kit for suspension with a lot more adjustability. So that's something that I've always done on my cars as well, is upgraded the suspension, because I think it does help, especially when you're launching from a dig. You want to be able to get, those back tires to squat down properly and level the car out, so you can, get to speed as fast as possible.
Yeah. Yeah. So Ravi, tell us about this. Tell us about your 991 turbo, because that car is fast as hell. And if you didn't see the bumper off like this, you would think it was just a stock 991 turbo, with some wheels on it. So tell us about the build. I know it's progressed a few different times.
Yeah, I kind of was like at the right place, right time with that car. It was actually somebody else's project that wanted to get out of it because it was taking a little longer than expected to get done. And so the car I found at Evolution Motorsports in Arizona and Phoenix, and the customer was originally from Illinois. So he had shipped the car down to Evolution Motorsports, I think in like 2016. And this was one of those first super high horsepower 991 turbo builds before a lot of the other shops kind of figured out the Cybex and figured out the right recipe to get these cars to go so fast. And I think the guy came in from Arizona and he drove the car and it wasn't like fully refined and it was a little jerky. And I think the reality started to set in for him about what owning 1,000 horsepower car really means. It's cool to say you have one, but the idea that you're going to be able to like daily drive it and do all the things that you want to be able to do, I think, the reality just kind of set in and he was like, it's really taken a long time. It's not as refined as I thought it would be. Can you help me sell it? That's what he told the guys at Evolution Motorsports. So Evolution Motorsports being a customer of mine, the word had kind of got out that I was looking for a car to kind of do my own build. And when I saw that this car was like, I would say 70% of getting done, and it really just needed a little bit kick in the pants from the owner to kind of get the car done because now he had a customer for it. It was a good buy. I got a really good deal on it, and it saved me a lot of time in terms of building my own. And it was completely stock looking when I got it. So once I got the car and, fine-tuned the tuning, did the suspension, did the wheels, did all the safety equipment, did the seats, it looked really good. And, at that point I thought it looked looked the part for kind of a show and go car that kind of helped the brand.
Yeah, I'd say it definitely has the show too. Things legit.
So, yeah. And then, we did some stuff that had never been done on the car, like the custom one-off duckbill that, my good friend Chris at Sterling Autocom built for me. With the half-mile stuff, we wanted to eliminate as much drag as possible. And these Porsche wings that go up at speed just create more drag. It's more stuff in the air. So we removed it, put the duckbill, we put the Eventuri intake in the back. Sheepy built me a titanium exhaust for the car that sounds bitchin', saved a lot of weight. So we had fun with it. We supported a lot of the guys industry that I know personally, who run different companies, wanted to get, all high end parts on it and really showcase the vehicle for the brand and, go fast in it.
So yeah. I'm going to Fish. I don't mean to hijack, but I'm going to hijack here for a sec. So, all right. So all these things we're talking about being competitive, we're going back to that. So it's like, how can you be part of Airstrip Attack? Because Ravi, we're going to get back to your cars because you got some sick cars that we want to chat about, and that's a rabbit hole we're definitely going to go down. So how can you be part of Airstrip Attack? I can tell you right now, head over to airstripattack.co, check out our tech specs. We're going to talk about real quick about those in a second, and also our safety requirements. But check out airstripattack.co, click on the participant tab, and basically that's going to break down all the information. You know what I think would be really good is if we collabed with Ravi and maybe some of our other partners and basically built out kind of like, hey, half mile racing it's new. Not a lot of people from a grassroots perspective know what it looks like. Maybe we build out kind of like just a low level guide, like, hey, think about this. Like half mile racing's new. You're gonna have heat soak. You need better brakes. Think about your tires. Think about obviously your safety equipment. Things like that. I think that might be a pretty cool idea actually. But to answer questions, airstripattack.co. I know I'm just jiving off the handle right here. Airstripattack.co. Check out how to register. Tech. Let's talk tech real quick. Jason, what you got?
Well, I mean, tech is they're just right there at the website, airstripattack.co. You could download our tech form. It's a self-tech form. You just sort of go through it. It's just making sure that everything's bolted up right. You don't have anything leaking. Your brakes are good. Your tires are good. It's real basic. On that website, if you just go there and you browse a little bit, you're going to have all the information you need to register, to self-tech, and you'll have all your information for safety.
Yeah, cool. And as far as the safety stuff too, I know Ravi, thankfully, is one of the guys that I know takes safety very seriously, and he's always showed up to our events with the right equipment for the right speeds and the right cars. A lot of you guys know kind of accidents that have happened at, other events that, didn't have proper safety rules and things like that. And, for us, we obviously want to make sure everyone goes home to their families and dogs and cats and, whatever. So, this past season, last season we started implementing it a lot stronger, and we'll do the same this season. Is that first half of the day, I basically sit on the return road as cars come in, and if you go over 180, I'm going to stop you and I'm going to inspect your car and make sure that you have if you're going over 180, you have Hans, fire suit, roll cage, fire extinguisher, gloves, all that. And thankfully Ravi's, been one of our good ones about that. We've had to have other conversations with other shops that, might come out for the first time with some crazy 200 mile per hour car and they don't have the right safety equipment. And, they might complain or, that, well, we didn't know, but we've made it very clear. And I think you guys can all appreciate and understand why we implement the safety, precautions we do, given how fast we're going. But yeah, I mean, I think that's another thing to go back to kind of Ravi's Porsches and his 991 Turbo. I mean, what do you think about the 991 Turbo as a platform? It seems like, in the past couple of years, it's really came, leaps and bounds on as far as not only the potential you can get from the car, but, to go 180 in that car, with some bolt-ons and, good gas is pretty crazy. Did you kind of see that when you were building the car, just how much potential that thing had?
Yeah, I mean, this market is like completely exploded. And I would say in the last like year and a half, 2 years, it's, there's a lot more shops from around the country doing the work. It's gotten really competitive and everyone's pushing the envelope. It's crazy because I went to Never Lift. Okay, so this was April 2019 or May 2019 when I did 187. Since then, that didn't last very long. It was like the fastest Porsche on the West Coast. The guys went 193. Like Blackwell's car super fast. Sean from Silly Rabbit Motorsports has gone, high 190s. The guys on the East Coast are going super fast. Especially now with like the whole COVID-19 and what it's done to like the exotic used car market. Like today I saw a 2018 991 Turbo going for $112,000. This is like $100,000 off what the MSRP would be. And these have like less than 10,000 miles on it. And look at Jason, he's like rubbing it. But and it's as wild as you want to go. You can get 800 horsepower out of your car and do, high 170s for like 20 grand, 25 grand in mods at most. Or you can put 50 grand into it and you got a car that will get you into the 190s, or you can put 100 grand into it and you got a damn fast high 190, maybe possible 200 mile an hour car. So, when you see what the platform is doing, it's pretty cool, and it's happening all over the world. A lot of guys see that the 991 Turbo is it's a luxury sports car that you can get a lot of power out of it.
Let's take a look at, because we actually have a video of one of the passes from his 991 Turbo. So let's see what we got here. Yeah, that draggy overlay is pretty badass.
That's a really good thing.
He's yelling.
He's screaming in the background.
Yeah. So many
like
people
I'm riding
dragging
the car go fast. What's up?
So many of these draggy videos, I see people will send them to us sometimes, and they'll post them and tag us. And there's so much yelling, like whether it's like the driver yelling because that was his best pass so far, right? So he's just excited. Or sometimes it's the passenger yelling because you're racing someone, and they're like, "Oh yeah, you're gapping the fuck out of them. You're gapping the fuck." Like there's always someone yelling. It's never just a clean, just a video through. Someone's always talking.
I mean, there's a lot of adrenaline when you're like going for those types of speeds, and it's almost like you're a horse jockey, slapping the horse. You're just yelling, hoping that somehow the car's going to keep going faster, And I think once you're about, I would say a little bit about a quarter mile, you kind of know if you've had a good run or not. Like is your car like going to get that speed? And it just kind of goes from there. Like the launch is important, the first couple gears. And once you get into that like third, fourth gear and your car's cruising, you kind of like know in your head already, like this is going to be a good one. So, I guess the adrenaline just takes over. You start yelling random shit.
Not today.
I track based on when I shift in my car. I track it on when I shift in the fifth. So I can see the flag coming and I'm in fourth. And I know if I shift in the fifth, like early, like the flag's really far away, I'm like, dude, I'm gonna fucking kill it this run. Sometimes I'm like almost to the flag, and I'm like, oh man, like now I'm shifting in the fifth. Like, you know, that's a problem for my car.
So let's back to the topic. So we got 1 or 2 days, Jason. What are we thinking here? So,
yeah, I mean, Airstrip Attack is a 2-day event. You know, all 6 or 7 of our events throughout the season are 2-day events. They're Saturday and Sunday. A lot of people love to sign up on Saturday, and I understand why, because it's a draining, you know, like going out, racing, hanging out with your friends, working on your car. You know, you feel drained. So I think a lot of people feel like, you know, I'm not going to sign up on Sunday because I got to work on Monday. I personally always think it's worth it to take Monday off and sign up for both days, because so many times people go out there, like our last Coalinga event last October, you know, a lot of, like, on Sunday, you just have fewer cars. And then we had this crazy thing happen. And it happens all the time. It happened in Colorado, I think in 2018. 2018, it happened in Colorado too. Like 3 or 4 p.m. on Sunday, it just went straight downwind, like 30 miles per hour. And everybody that was running 170, like Adam Bullock, was running like 177, 178 all weekend, like consistently. He's a very consistent driver. Car's very consistent. It's built right. It went downwind 30 miles per hour, and he did like, what, 181 in the afternoon fish? I think it was something like that.
Yeah, he picked up a couple mile per hour just because of the wind.
Yeah. So that's the thing. Is like when you come out and you race one day, and sure, it's fun, and it's always going to be fun, but you just sometimes might miss out on that opportunity to just tack on 2 to 3 mile per hour to your run, whether it's because the weather condition changes on Sunday, whether it's the track conditions change, your car, you can make improvements to your car by, you know, dialing it in with your tuner remotely or whatever it is. Having that extra day out there, I see so many people go faster on Sunday for various reasons. I personally have seen it enough where I think it's definitely worth it. You get to feel the car better. You might become better as a driver. And there's just so many things that can change. I think it's worth it. So,
yeah. 2 days. YouTube comment, people go home early on Sunday so you can get more passes in too. That's definitely a real thing. I mean, especially some of our like newer events like Indy. I mean, you can literally hot lap Sunday. I think like 40 plus passes was our record in one day. So Sunday's definitely a lighter day as well.
Zach from Cowboy, I think, ran something like, was it 40 something or 50 something passes?
I think it was like 49 passes. Yeah, it was definitely
49
a record.
One day.
Talk about some heat soak. So part of the experience, the host hotel, making it a trip. I mean, I know we're back off the beaten path, but like real quick. So I mean, Ravi, have you experienced Airstrip Attack yet?
Yeah, I mean, well, I've done the Never Lift events, and then I did the Coalinga event last year as well. So yeah, I mean, it's fun, you know. And I think, you know, going back to what you were saying about the 2 days, it's nice just to kind of come back on Saturday, not feel like you have to leave. You know, have a good steak at Harris Ranch, drink with everybody, hang out in the parking lot, you know, check out some of the cars, and you know, the thing about this, it's an official race series. There's camaraderie there, right? There's consistency with the drivers. Like, people really enjoy coming out to these half-mile races, and you kind of get the bug. Like, once you come once, you can't wait for the next event. You just want to get out there again because you want to go faster. You want to improve on things. So, you know, when you go for 2 days, you have that bug while you're sleeping in bed. You're like, man, I cannot wait to get back out there tomorrow. So, you know, I can see if I can go faster than I did yesterday. So, yeah, I think there's a lot of pros way outweigh the cons of like, oh, I got to take work off on Monday or something I can't do. And, you know, if you're from anywhere in California, it's pretty central that you could probably leave at the end of the day on Sunday, still get home, still get to work on Monday, no problem. So, I mean, that's what we do.
Yeah.
And I think it's
and your experience that, like you mentioned, you know, grab a steak at Harris Ranch and, you know, have a couple of drinks in the bar. It gives you the chance to really get to know. I mean, for you, you're a manufacturer and a sponsor. It gives you a chance to probably have conversations and get to know some of these drivers, some that probably use your parts, and I'm sure some that don't. But when are you going to get a chance to sit at a bar, have a whiskey with, you know, a dozen other Porsche guys or other guys in your class, and to compare mods and to become friends and to actually talk on that level where, you know, when you're in your office and you get emails or they give you a call, hey, what's up with this radiator or that? Like, you know, that's just a quick on the phone thing, you know. But I mean, I think what I've seen is bonds between drivers and sponsors and groups of people develop over the last 9 years, where people they're coming out to race, they can't wait to go fast, and they also can't wait to see some of their buddies some of the friends they've made at the restaurants and the bars at night, which is part of the Airstrip Attack weekend.
I also think I was just saying, I also think, the good thing about it is it's very data driven, like you get to see in one place how products and, compare side by side, and you can, have the results speak for themselves, versus like on a forum or, in some YouTube video where someone posts a draggy clip, it's such a tiny piece of the story of who really knows what's going on. But when you have different builds and different products in the same place at the same time under the same conditions, you can really see, what stands out above the others. So I think it's a great opportunity, not only for shops, but manufacturers and enthusiasts and everyone to really be able to see what performs the best under, those conditions.
Oh, yeah. So I think I'm going to take this opportunity to introduce our special guest, Ravi Dawani from CSF Cooling. Ravi, thank you for joining us. We just couldn't help but bring you in a little bit early. I'm going to, funny thing, I was working on finding an image for you, Ravi, for this right here. And I got to lie, dude. I'm not going to lie. I was working very late on a Friday night. I was chatting with Jason. We might have been having a couple drinks over a live stream or something. And dude, I just I had a hard time finding a goofy photo of you. You were way too normal, dude. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it was. There was nothing good. That was the best photo I had. So there's something underneath the picture that I know. There's something.
Yeah, no, that actually was from my wedding last July, and it was an Indian wedding, so I actually came in on a horse. So that's actually me sitting on top of a horse, which is a traditional Indian barat. So maybe next time I'll just send you like one of my mug shots or something. And you can put that up.
Lord knows that's what I was looking for. That's exactly what I was looking for.
Yeah.
Lord knows that
I think
three of the four of us all have mug shots.
I think what Randy was trying to ask is give us an embarrassing story about yourself. Give us something that's not the professional, put together. Give us a funny one.
Man, I got so many embarrassing stories. Actually, I got a funny story for you. I was actually just reminiscing with some high school buddies I hung out with this past weekend, and we were talking about like smoking weed and how we used to do it so much when we were like younger, and now I'm like, dude, if I smoked the type of weed I smoked back then, I'd be so paranoid, I'd jump off a roof, the weed's so strong and whatnot. One of my buddies brought up the story about how we were like getting high in like his parents' house, and I had parked my car outside of the house, and I had kind of blocked his neighbor's driveway. And the neighbor came over, he's like, hey, can you tell your buddy to move his car? And I just was so ripped, and I had I was like 16, I just started smoking weed, so I go outside, I get in the car to move it, and I straight up drove the car right onto the guy's grass, into his car. Just totally didn't know what the difference between reverse and forward was, and I just standing there. My friends were watching from the window, just laughing at me, and I got about 500 stories of those between 16 and where I am now in my early 30s. So,
what was your first car? What did you do that in?
Yeah.
My first car was a hand-me-down from a family friend, and it was a two-door Honda Accord V6, the 2002 model with the triangle lights in the back. And I would we had auto shop. So, that was my deal. And I found so much stupid shit to put on my car that
some
most of it was bought off eBay. Yeah. I had I put the underglow on it for sure. So I had the underglow on it. I had,
what color?
I actually had one. I actually paid $50 more for it at the time, that it changed colors. and there was like a controller that I put underneath
Yeah.
my dash that like beat to the music. You could pick what color you wanted, and it was such like a herky jerky installation. I remember that because you only had like 1 hour in auto shop to put it in, right? So you get to that last 10 minutes and you just start like zip tying and bolting stuff just so you can like get your car out of there. And I remember it was like 3 years later, I was driving it from Arizona. I went to school in college in Arizona, and I was driving to San Diego to see my buddies. And I just heard this like clicking sound as we were driving. And one of my buddies like, "What's that noise?" I'm like, "I don't know. Maybe like a piece of paper got stuck under the car." And all of a sudden it was like a boom. And I just see like these like LED light rods come flying
Oh,
on
no.
the freeway out of the car. And I'm like, "Oh, I think that was my underglove." Just like came flying under my car. So
I think that was the car gods doing you a favor.
yeah, and then I got rid of that car, and then I was like driving a PT Cruiser. That was like another like family hand-me-down. My friends would call it like the PT Loser, and you know, just, like different cars that I would just get my hands on to drive, and you know, then finally when I started making money, you know, like year 5 or 6, I bought the 996 Turbo that I own, the blue one.
Nice.
Yeah, and that's a roof car, right? I remember you were telling me a little bit about that. That's pretty unique and pretty rare.
Hold up,
Yeah,
hold
that's
up, hold up. I'm sorry. Hijacking. Fisher, what was your first car? What was your very first car?
Oh, my first car. So when I was 16, I basically took my dad's like hand-me-down Tahoe. He had a Tahoe, and when I was, and my parents weren't into cars, and so when I was younger, like I was always a key part of the process in the buying of my parents' cars because they always like, you know, didn't know what was good or what was cool, and I was 13 and knew everything or thought I did. So I remember when I was around that like 14 or 15-year-old mark, when they were shopping cars, I was scheming because I'm like, I'm probably going to get one of these cars. So, you know, I'm like, no, you know, get the navigation, get the upgraded wheels, like, I'm like, no, you'll need it because I figured that I was going to get it like in a couple of years. So I had the Tahoe, and meanwhile, like I'd been saving up, and while I was working, I was a valet in high school, and then I bought a B5 S4. So that was like my first like performance car, was an 01 B5 S4, and I remember I did like a tune on it, and I was able to beat like an STI, and that was like the craziest thing that I could beat a stock STI. I remember like how big of a deal that was to me. But yeah, that's where it started for me.
Jason, what about you?
Jason?
Yeah. So, you know, I grew, you know, my family, we grew up with like very, very little. So when I turned 16, my dad was generous enough to buy me, I think it was like a 1985 Chevrolet. What was it? A Caprice? What's it called? I have to look it up.
Like an old cop car looking?
Yeah. It's like a
Crown Vic?
Classic. It's a Chevrolet
Yeah.
Caprice Classic. It was in light blue. I grew up in Long Beach, so shout out to the hood. And thanks to that, literally within less than 4 months, it was stolen. So then you know, my dad's like, well, you know, you got to go out and work and fucking buy another car. So then I didn't have a car for like a few months. So all my friends had to pick me up, and then I went out and I worked and I saved all my money and I bought like a $2,000 like Toyota pickup truck with like 250,000 miles on it. So yeah, I didn't have a nice car for a while. Like my first few cars were like, they were all pretty shitty. So
There's
What was
no
your
such
first,
thing
like,
as a
nice
shitty,
car?
shitty bad car. First car.
yeah.
What was your first
Jason,
nice
what was your
car?
first, like, yeah.
My first nice car was a 1991 Acura Integra LS, and so me and my brother are both like, so I'm a little bit older than you guys. So back then we were racing in Compton, and all I did was like I literally just took the muffler off and made, you know, so it was just loud as fuck.
Right, yeah.
I cut 2 coils off. We took the springs out, cut 2 coils off the top. That dumped the shit out of the car. So it was lowered. It was an automatic because I mean I knew how to drive stick. I don't know why I bought an automatic. And instead of getting any performance things, I was that guy who was into like subwoofers. So I had, so we would all go racing, but I was the guy always providing the music. That was my first one. After that, I went racing, but I had like a pair of 10s and a pair of 12-inch kickers in the trunk of a 91 Acura Integra, and that thing was, you could hear Dr. Dre like from 2 blocks away. That was weird.
You were thug. You thug AF. Man.
Yeah, that was my first nice car. And after that, I actually bought a 93 Integra that was manual, and I did like wheels and wheel suspension and nice exhaust system and all of that, one-piece headlights. Yeah, and then after that, I got a 300ZX. It was a 91. 300ZX twin turbo. I love that car. Should have never sold it.
For me,
Randall's, what about you? Yeah.
Going back to Ravi's story. So this is a good one. So this is like my mom she had a Gen 1 Mazda Miata. And this was like, I didn't have my own car yet, so I would always just like steal hers and just go ripping around in it because it was hella fun. And I was a young 16-year-old kid just doing dumb stuff. And I remember just ripping around the backside of a shopping center. It was like a TJ Maxx shopping center, and I remember just being like, again, young and dumb, and I was ripping down the back corridor, like where all the dumpsters are, you know. And I was just like kind of drag racing myself. There's nobody else back there, and I realized like all of a sudden I had this epiphany. It was like, oh shit. I'm pretty sure, and I was doing like probably, I don't know, only like 40 miles an hour or something, but I was like, I'm pretty sure there's a speed bump back here. And as soon as that thought went through my head, boom, smoked the speed bump, caught air, it jammed the front bumper, blew the airbags, shattered the windshield, and I came down and screeched, and the whole car locks up, you know, and it's just like, fuck. And I open the door and I look over to the side and there's somebody just smoking a cigarette just on his cigarette break out TJ Maxx. I'm just like, oh my God. So that sat there for a while and that was kind of like a punishment. So fast forward to my actual first car. It was an 87 Firebird Formula and that thing was a total POS, but I loved it. But I would run from cops in that thing, and it would just like.
That's very Joe Exotic of you.
It is actually. I'm going to change my name to Ryan Exotic here. Thanks, Tyler. I love the idea. But yeah, so that was me. So let's keep going. So, Ravi, you were Fisher was chatting about your 996 certified roof car. Is that right?
Yeah.
Dude, let's take a look at this thing real quick. Yes.
I love that car.
Tell us about that, Rob.
Yeah,
that's never going anywhere. That's like one I'm gonna plan to keep forever. Again, one of those purchases that was like right place, right time. This was like back in 2014, 2015. I was looking for a 996 turbo, and I had walked into like a used car dealer in Laguna Beach to buy one, and I was like dead set like on just like basic black one because I just wanted to get one. And somebody came in as I was about to go for the test drive and like grabbed the keys out of my hand and was like, nope, I'm gonna buy it. And I'm so glad that experience happened because I would have never found this car. I actually found it on Renlist, and the guy was in Chicago. And this is my first time buying like a really nice sports car, so I was a little hesitant about buying it sight unseen, but I was actually in Toronto at the time, living there, going back and forth. So I actually stopped in Chicago, got the longest layover possible, which was like 18 hours. And one of my buddies picked me up. We hung out all night, went out with a few friends. And then in the morning, he drove me out to the suburbs, checked out the car. The guy who sold it to me was super cool. And that's how I bought it. And then I just had it shipped down to California. I'm actually the fourth owner on the car, and everybody who's touched the car has done other modifications to it. So it's got a pretty good story. The car actually started as a new car in Southern California, went around the whole country, went to Maryland, then went to Chicago, then came back to Southern California, a completely different car. So that's how I fell into it. It makes about $550 to the wheels. Paint to sample Minerva blue. It's the only one in the world that color. And all the roof parts, and then I added obviously my cooling system, the GMG cage, and just trying to keep that nice and fresh.
That you did.
Yeah.
And some photos by the Larry Chen of Speed Hunters. Shout out to Larry Chen.
So what's the dream car? What's the, if you could sell everything and get one car, what would it be?
Oh, I mean, I feel like that's tough. I feel like that's always a changing question based on, where you are in life and what you've experienced and what you're trying to do. Um, like right now, I think getting a 720 is like super badass, right? I have parts that I've just come out with like last week for that car. It's kind of like in that supercar range. It's a pretty, they're fast, but I then sometimes think like my dream car is like a slammed Rolls Royce from like back in the day, right? Something that's just completely different. So it's always changing. I love my 996 turbo. I'm so blessed or thankful to be able to have that car, and I was in the right place, right time to buy it. I honestly, I mean, people hate on me about this, but they always say, which one do you like more, your 991 turbo or your 996? And it's like, without question, my 996 turbo. It's obviously not as fast as the 991. It doesn't have all the, modern tech to it, but there's just something about having a manual transmission car versus like a PDK and the enjoyment that you get from actually driving the car. Like if I'm going to a half mile, there's no question I'm taking the 991 turbo. But if I'm going cruising the canyons or just driving down the street or just kind of want to have that more engaging sensation, I kind of am starting to steer back towards older vehicles.
Tell us about your Evo X, because this thing is nasty.
My headache. Yeah. So this, again, this is the idea when I bought it to what this car has turned into. Definitely not the same. Bought the car from James Sofronis, owner of GMG. He had this. Barry Swisher, the guy who owns Swisher Sweets, actually used to run this car in the Pirelli World Challenge. And he was a client of GMG's. Apparently, he wanted to run an Evo, which is something they don't do. They're all like, Porsches, McLarens, Audis, all that stuff. And I was at GMG because they serviced my 996 Turbo, and I kind of saw this sitting in the race prep area, and I asked the GM Alan over there, I'm like, what the fuck is this Evo doing here? And he told me the story. And, this was like end of 2017, I think, 2016, 17. And we were kind of looking for a project car for the brand that would be something cool that we could build, talk about, and then take it to SEMA. So I called Alex at Sheepy, who does tons of Evo stuff. And he basically was like the devil on my shoulder. He's like, dude, that's such an amazing build. You got to buy it. You got to buy it. So he sold it to me. I wanted to buy it for 20 grand. He wanted to sell it to me for 25 grand. So we split it in the middle. And then me and my boy Ken, who works for us, we went and loaded up like an enterprise box truck of all the parts for the car. It was essentially a roller when I bought it because it had crashed and it was completely stripped down to just the cage and the white shell. So we bought all the parts. I mean, we got the box truck, loaded it all up, and then that was when we started to build it. And Sheepy was on board, built this like crazy turbo setup, with the hood exit exhaust, and we really worked with a lot of the guys in the industry that we were close to really. I called it like I guess like the magnus opus of everyone's work, that what they specialized in. I had Ryan from Rywire do all the electrical system, the wire tuck, all the motorsports. He did all the fuel system. John Sabal was involved. He did the rendering of the kit. LTMW painted it, installed the body kit. The guy down in San Diego, Gabe, did all like the metal aluminum paneling. So we just had a bunch of guys involved with the car that kind of specialized in something, and I would just drop the car off to them and I'm like, yo, you do your work, and we kind of just built it up for SEMA, and I gave everyone a lot of creativity to kind of do what they thought would be really cool. And the car's gone through like 3 iterations. It went from obviously like SEMA show car, and then it's had this like 2.5 year transformation of like a marketing vehicle that we just did photo shoots and like took to shows, to now trying to make it into like a legitimate time attack car, unlimited class. And it's been a really humbling experience because it hasn't gone the way I always wanted it to be. I mean, the car caught on fire back in November at Global Time Attack. And, thankfully, Michael Esso, who was driving the car, was super quick thinking, grabbed, drove the car on fire to the closest corner stand and grabbed the fire extinguisher from the corner person who wasn't even paying attention and put the fire out himself. And if he wasn't so quick thinking, that whole car would have gone up in flames. So right now, we've kind of been working behind the scenes to rebuild it, adding some more aero to the back of the car, and it's going to look completely different. We're going to repaint the car. I mean, I'm shit you not, like even with all my like industry discounts and like homie hookups, I'm over $300,000 into that car.
Damn, son.
And you start to think of like what I could have bought with that type of money. But I think it's been really good for the brand. People are really engaged with it. And it's something now that's just become like almost like a personal like obstacle and goal. It's like, I got to see this through, and every time I see the light at the end of the tunnel, something kind of pushes that light a little further out. But I'm like, I'm determined not to quit on building this car. And I just want to see this do like amazingly clean laps. So that's the story of it. And, before this whole COVID-19 thing, and, obviously before the fire where we had to rebuild it, the plan was actually to take this car and ship it around the world. We have a booth spot at Tokyo Auto Salon for it, Essen Motor Show. We wanted to get it to Germany and run the Nürburgring and really just get this thing dialed down and use it as a marketing vehicle for the brand, and just expose the brand and the car to, other places in the world that probably haven't seen a car so well built. I mean, the fabrication on the car, the motorsports wiring on the car, everything that's on it, I don't think there's a lot of cars out there that can hold a candle to how well built that car is.
So the lesson is never buy an Evo.
Never buy an Evo. I never thought I would own an Evo. I never wanted an Evo. I was never an Evo guy. Like I used to have like ambitions of like owning like an STI back in the day. And I always thought Evos were cool, but it was just one of those things where I bought it thinking it would be like a cool SEMA build, and then it just started to spiral out of control, and it's still spiraling out of control. Like I got a $15,000 bill sitting on my desk right now for the car. I'm like, what the fuck am I doing? It's like 5 years later, I'm still putting money into it. So, but
it's
everyone,
racing.
It's racing, and I think that's one thing that I was talking to some of the guys over the weekend. Racing is not cheap. It is not cheap, especially if you're trying to be competitive in whatever racing class you're doing. So it's something that I think when you start to get to that top tier of wanting to be the best or wanting to break records, it can get wildly expensive, and that can spiral out of control, because for a lot of these guys, it's like a sickness. They'd rather like starve and eat noodles all day so they had money to, buy the next mod for their car.
It's real.
We saw it when everyone got their stimulus checks. Fucking sales went through the roof last 2 weeks of April.
They're not eating, but at least they're getting those mods.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about like, I know you've done some really cool builds, and I think this also kind of ties in with the future, but that Bisimoto 935 electric build. So that's a fully electric car, right? That's using CSF cooling parts. Is that accurate?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's a lot of things that I think the mass public thinks an electric car is just a battery, but they don't realize that it generates a tremendous amount of heat and it needs to be cooled down. So people don't even know, like Teslas have radiators. It's like almost like a Porsche. There's like a 3 radiator system in the car, some of these Teslas, or they have like side pod radiators. And you need to cool the inverter, you need to cool the stator, you need to cool the motor. So there's a lot of different cooling going on with the car. And, I've talked to Tesla engineers, and they've told me that Teslas could be way faster if they figured out how to cool the battery down more.
Okay.
They just simply don't know how to do it in the packaging constraints that they have. So when BC, was building this car, he came to me and we kind of pieced together a system to kind of, cool his car. Like the radiator in the front is actually like a center radiator off like a Porsche GT3. And then we used like these small air to water or air to oil coolers for his side pods, like behind the ducts of his front doors. And that's how he's cooling the whole car. My friend Ryan at Rywire is really into like EV stuff, and he's got a couple crazy cars that he's building right now. He's building like an electric, he's building like an EV S2K for this year's SEMA. So I'm helping him with the cooling on that, and he's got like another Porsche project that he wants to build next year. That's kind of like a hybrid system. So yeah, electric cooling is something that really interests me. I talked to Lucas at English Racing, I think at the last Shift Sector event, and he was telling me that he wanted to, start doing a Tesla car. So a lot of guys have reached out to us because, they want to know how we started piecing some of these universal components for these cars. It's been pretty interesting.
Do you think that's a whole new market, like people modifying Teslas or modifying whatever their electric cars and buying aftermarket parts just like they would a 911 Turbo? I mean, is that kind of how you see the future, or is it not going to pan out like that?
It's interesting because Tesla is obviously the car everybody knows for electric, and there are guys trying to race those cars. Like, Ben at Bulletproof started like this Tesla Corsa racing series. But the thing about Teslas, you can only modify it so much because every car is connected to their cloud-based system. And if you start to really hack up the car, it just triggers like a don't drive your car, wait for the service guy to come pick it up. So a lot of the guys who are doing like the Pikes Peak stuff or other types of like hardcore Tesla racing, they've essentially just gutted the whole car, ripped out like the telecommunications to it, and they're just keeping the battery, right? And they're kind of like starting over. So until there's more guys doing that, I don't know how popular it's going to be. But it's something I think as these Teslas become really old, people are just going to start ripping out the batteries and doing cool stuff with them. Kelly Moss Motors has actually done, I think was what you're going to see the next evolution is like a hybrid. They have a 991 turbo that they added 150 horsepower electric motor between the engine and the transmission. And they're going to start, I think they want to come out to one of your half-mile races on the East Coast, but he's planning on doing 220 in his car. That's what he thinks he's going to be able to do. So it's got the 991 turbo power plant, add that 150 horsepower juice motor into it for the acceleration. And then, that's where I think you're going to start seeing the next wave of performance is the addition of these hybrid motors to where you can add horsepower that way.
Yeah. Well, it's also like 918 technology, right? Like, aren't they saying that the next, iteration of 911 Turbo or Turbo S is going to be some like Turbo S hybrid? That because obviously they have the technology, right? They have the torque fill they can use the electric motor for, and then the gas motor for the top end, And I agree. I think that's going to be a game changer because it completely gets rid of any lag whatsoever, And Tesla is showing how much power can be put down, like through electric motors. Like you think it would just blow the tires off, but there's so much technology, I think, in how they're able to ramp in that power that traction is kind of becoming less of an issue than it has been in the past because of just the technology with it.
Mm-hmm. And I think a big thing about it is the technology is only going to or I guess the part of the performance part of the market is only going to develop if shops start taking the risk and doing it, right? You're going to have these aftermarket performance shops go, I'm going to dive into hybrid technology or electric technology because you know how it is. Everyone's just kind of chasing the same thing. For a shop to go put their own money on a development project and they don't have a timeline of how long it might take to figure it out, sometimes that's a little daunting. I mean, to go create a new market and hope people like it enough to start sending them their cars and start making money and generating revenue off it, I think that's where the market is right now. So I do commend guys like Kelly Moss, Rywire, what BC is doing because they are like the forefront of that part of the technology. Someone's got to push it, and I see these guys doing that.
That's a really good point. I mean, going to hybrid or all electric technology, that's like a paradigm shift. You go from mechanical engineers and technicians to electrical engineers. That's like an entire other discipline of how do you work on these cars. I was heavily involved with the Pikes Peak Hill Climb as our official media partners, but it was like electric technology. That is the future of that race. For a bunch of different reasons, but primarily because you don't have any loss of power as you go up to top of the altitude, right? But it's like they're electricians, like electrical engineers working on those cars, not necessarily mechanical engineers. Now, the old suck squish bang blow is no longer valid, really. So it's interesting to see an industry start to change, and I wonder how long it's going to take for that transformation to to actually take.
Wasn't it like was it Volkswagen? That was the first all electric car, right? From like 4 years ago
To go up
that
the
won
hill?
the hill climb. Yeah, all electric Volkswagen won it, wasn't it?
No,
And it was all electric.
man, I can't even. I'm blanking. I think it
I
was
thought it
like
was.
it was Reese Millen. He set like he was one of the ones like the first ones to set like an actual all track record for the year in an electric. But what the car was, it was. I don't know. Somebody hit us up on comment on YouTube. I know that. I can't. I'm blanking. Yeah, as soon as I was no longer on the mountain, I stopped following it. But so, future of technology, COVID impacts on manufacturers. So, what has been the impact on you guys? I mean, Ravi, you're saying parts are flying off the shelf.
Yeah, I mean, things have picked up. Like, I'm actually sitting in my office at work right now. So thankfully, we've been able to operate since the shutdown even started because we're deemed an essential business as being part of the transportation sector of the economy, which is great because my biggest responsibility right now is I want to keep all my employees, with a job. I don't want to let anybody go. And, it's nice to not be stuck at home doing nothing like people I know. I actually still feel like I have a purpose. I can still continue to operate my business. And I don't have that fear of what it feels like to shut your business down for so long and then have to like figure out how to start it back up. So, we saw February, so January, thankfully we had a great 2019 and January started to continue it. It was our third best month ever. And then February dipped because that's kind of when we already were going to experience a little bit of a shutdown with, Chinese New Year. And then it had started over there. So shipments already were starting to come in late for some of our components. March was really, really bad. We were down like 60% on the high performance side. And, that was tough because a lot of distributors really start to, especially in high performance market, they start to stock up for like spring and summer in March and April. So a lot of them either had already put their initial big buy-in stock orders to a lot of manufacturers where they had started sending bulletins out like, we're not sending any more orders. We're going to reduce our inventory positions on all of our lines. We have way too much stuff and we're just not going to be sending orders anymore. So March was really bad. And then April, the last couple of weeks really picked up once everyone started getting their stimulus checks, but we were still down about 40% in April compared to what our goals were. And so far May has been good, but I'm like cautiously optimistic to see what it's going to be like. Is it going to be like here? Was it like a stimulus pop where everyone got their money, they spent the $1,250 and now they don't have any more? So it'll just be really interesting to see what happens. But I think everything is just kind of going to be dictated on the economy opening up. And one thing that we have seen open up are racetracks. Track days are happening. It's definitely kind of falls into the social distancing if you're sitting in your car and everyone's kind of like apart from each other. So I feel like that should hopefully be a little bit of a boost to our business moving forward. But then again, I've talked to other companies and their business is doing either flat from last year or up. So everyone's just in a different boat depending on their business model. I think a lot of direct to consumer online businesses are doing a lot better than your normal 3-step distribution businesses like we have.
That's a good point. Adapt and overcome, especially in this environment, right?
And the rich guys still have tons of money. The guys who drive the Lambos and the McLarens and all that shit, they don't care. They're still spending their money like it's crazy. So we've seen like different products and different customers still doing really well and thriving versus some customers who might have like lower budget customers, maybe starting to feel the effects a little bit more.
100%. And and I guess we're all looking forward to getting our racetrack open as well, so we can get these guys off the streets and go racing. Hell yeah!
Yeah, I mean,
Ravi,
go ahead.
What are the chances we're going to see you at an out-of-state event this year?
I would really like to. Before the whole shutdown, the Texas event, one of the Texas events was on my calendar. Us being part of a series sponsor was not just to like have our name on banners and like promote you guys, but actively be more involved, connect more with the racers, be part of the culture of what you guys have, built. And us as a cooling supplier who's very connected to a lot of our customers or dealers, we wanted to be able to invite them out on behalf of, racing with CSF and showing what these cars around the country are doing with our products. We are developing a new F90 M5 kit. I work with a really good partner of mine in Texas who's building 1,000 horsepower F90. That's probably the fastest F90 in the world, that we wanted to bring it out to a half-mile race and show people what it was doing. If it was like the Porsche scene from the East Coast, or different just demographics have different cars, whether it's GTR guys and I'm sure you guys see it all the time. I mean, there's more types of cars that show up to certain events just based on geographical area and what's kind of popular. We were really interested in getting out to some more of the events, and we hope we can still do that.
That would be awesome.
Yeah, we'd love to see you out, man. I mean, you got some badass builds, and obviously you got that turbo at we're excited to have you out, Ravi, and we really appreciate the support. So that's the top of the half hour, guys. We're going to cut it. We're going to kill it right here. Ravi, thank you so much for joining us. CSF Cooling. Ravi, I'm going to give you one. There we go. Ravi Dalwani, CSF Cooling. Check him out on Instagram. Check him out on Facebook. Check him out on YouTube. These guys are doing big things. Ravi's got way too many cars for any of us. He's way too normal. Ravi, I'm going to be looking for those pictures so I can share them next time. Guys, thank you so much. Check us out, episode 4 for Airstrip Attack Live, where we're chatting about anything and everything Airstrip Attack. Episode 4 coming at you in 2 weeks, May 26th, 2 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. I said that right, guys, right? May 26th? 2 weeks, right? Yeah. We got lives to carry on with. So check us out, May 26th, episode 4. We'll figure out who our special guest is, but we're super amped. We're super stoked on having him out. So thanks again, Ravi. We will see you at our next event, hopefully a lot sooner than California, that's for sure. We'll check you later, brother, and everybody else, we'll see you episode 4 in a couple of weeks. So talk to you guys soon. Ryan, Fisher, Jason, Ravi.
Thanks, guys.
Out. You got it, man. Cheers.
Peace out.
Thanks, Ravi. See you guys later.
Cheers, gentlemen. And that is a wrap. Ciao.